Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are embarking on a really profound journey. We're going to decode the psychological barriers that keep incredibly ambitious people completely stuck. It's like a giant puzzle. We're going to map out the hidden monsters of the human mind, figure out why our own brains sometimes literally work against our biggest goals, and most importantly, we'll equip you with the tools to finally break free and conquer the path ahead.
To truly understand this, I want you to picture someone. Let's call them the dreamer. You've likely met them, or, in your more vulnerable moments, maybe you've even been them. The dreamer talks passionately about massive success, wealth, the whole shebang. They can envision this transformed life with crystal clarity, and they genuinely have the underlying capability to pull it off. But year after year, nothing actually changes, and the heavy emotional weight of that stagnation really starts to crush them. Now, it's super easy for the outside world to just write this off as laziness, right? But as we unpack the rigorous psychology behind this inaction, we're going to see that laziness has almost nothing to do with it. Actually, our dreamer is trapped in a terrifyingly complex psychological maze, fighting battles they don't even realize are happening.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, the dreamer's perfect illusion, addicted to the potential.
So our dreamer's journey into the maze kicks off with the very first hidden monster, which is the illusion of the start. You see, our brains are these remarkable biological machines, but they have a fatal flaw when it comes to ambition. They are incredibly easy to trick. For the dreamer, simply thinking about a goal and actually progressing toward it become completely entangled. In clinical psychology and neuroscience, we know that vividly imagining a successful future actually triggers the brain's reward system. It releases dopamine, giving the brain this premature sense of achievement. When the dreamer constantly visualizes their ultimate success, their brain reacts almost exactly as if they've already done the agonizingly hard work. They extract the emotional reward without ever lifting a finger. The tragic result here: it entirely annihilates the urgency required to take actual action. The brain essentially goes, "Hey, we already conquered this. Why go to war?"
And this neurochemical trickery creates a really powerful, paralyzing addiction. Talking about big dreams feels amazing. It creates a thrilling sense of possibility, a vision of future success, and a shiny, flawless new identity. The dreamer becomes totally intoxicated by this pure, frictionless potential. But the effort of reality? That's a totally different beast. Real progress is agonizingly slow. It's repetitive, it's often deeply uncomfortable, humiliating, and honestly just incredibly boring. So rather than going out to face the messy, tedious beast of reality, the dreamer hides. They stay safely attached to the intoxicating idea of who they could be, simply because it feels vastly better than confronting the unpolished reality of who they are right now.
Moving on to Section 2, Unmasking the Hidden Fear, Protecting the Perfect Dream. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that as our dreamer wanders deeper into the maze, we hit a much darker obstacle blocking the path. This paralysis we're witnessing isn't a lack of ambition at all. It's more like a shape-shifting dragon, the fear of failure, hiding itself perfectly underneath a mask of motivation. The dreamer genuinely wants to succeed. They desperately want to reach that finish line, but they are absolutely terrified of what it would mean if they tried their hardest, gave it everything they had, and still failed. I mean, what would that catastrophic defeat say about their fundamental worth? So, to avoid risking their fragile ego and self-image, they retreat. They decide to set up camp forever in the planning phase. Because in a kind of twisted bit of logic, as long as they never actually try, they can never actually fail. By doing absolutely nothing, their dream gets to remain perfect, pristine, and entirely untouched by reality. Which brings us to Section 3, the overthinking exhaustion trap, draining your mental energy. And this brilliantly illustrates what happens next. As the dreamer wrestles with this hidden fear, they summon another monster to justify their inaction, a sprawling, inescapable labyrinth of overanalysis. Just look at the sheer complexity of the cycle. They project every single possible outcome, obsessing over every remote, disastrous possibility, and calculating every minute detail of the journey ahead. While this feels immensely productive and responsible to them, it's actually a fatal trap. This constant, relentless cognitive load drains an unbelievable amount of mental and emotional stamina. They're basically fighting phantom battles in their mind. By the time the actual moment arrives where they need to take a simple physical step forward, their mental energy reserves are totally depleted. They literally feel too exhausted to begin, and so paralyzed by fatigue. They do nothing. All right, Section 4, the myth of being ready, the waiting trap.
So, exhausted, terrified, and drained by the labyrinth, the dreamer looks for a safe refuge. They need a place to hide that sounds completely reasonable, both to themselves and to the outside world. And they find it in the ultimate mirage, the myth of the right moment. Think about it. How many times have you heard someone casually say, "Oh, I'm just waiting until I feel ready"? It is incredibly common to believe that a feeling of readiness is a strict prerequisite to starting a journey. But the deep psychological mechanics we're exploring today completely shatter that idea. In the real world, readiness almost always comes after action, never before. You take the scary, uncertain step and then your brain adapts to the new environment, forcing you to become ready. By deciding to wait for the perfect time, when all the stars miraculously align, the fear dissipates, and the plan is completely flawless, the dreamer guarantees only one absolute certainty: that the perfect time will simply never arrive.
Let's move to Section 5, Aligning Your True Identity, Slaying the Final Boss.
We are now approaching the deepest, darkest core of the maze, the final boss on the dreamer's journey. This ultimate obstacle isn't about what they want to achieve. It's about who they fundamentally believe they are. It rests on a really profound psychological truth. The brain violently resists actions that don't match how a person sees themselves. This cognitive dissonance is the absolute root of self-sabotage. If the dreamer talks endlessly about building an empire, but secretly deep down in their subconscious they believe, "I'm just not a disciplined person," or "I'm an imposter who never finishes things," well, their brain is going to sabotage their ambition at every turn. Your brain craves psychological consistency above all else. It will actively torpedo your grandest goals if they threaten your core identity. No matter how spectacularly big the dreams are, if your internal identity doesn't align with the grim actions required, you're going to be anchored in place.
Let's see how this builds. Because to slay this final boss and actually escape the maze, bridging the gap from dreams to reality requires the ultimate climax of the hero's journey. It requires an act of literal self-transformation. Step 1 is having the courage to recognize those internal misalignments, admitting out loud that you secretly view yourself as unmotivated or unworthy. Step 2 is the crucible, the really painful part: acting. Anyway, forcing the grueling behavior despite your entire nervous system screaming at you to stop and retreat to safety. And step 3, that is the metamorphosis. Sustained action actively forces your brain to rewrite its own narrative. You literally have to shed the comfortable, safe identity of the dreamer in order to forge the hardened identity of the doer.
Finally, Section 6, Taking the First Real Step, the True Difference Maker. So the crucial point is this. We've unmasked the dopamine illusions, the shape-shifting fears, the exhausting labyrinths of overthinking, and those paralyzing traps of identity. Our protagonist is finally standing at the edge of the psychological maze, looking out at the harsh but beautiful landscape of reality. So what makes the ultimate difference out there? Having massive, world-changing dreams isn't rare at all. Millions of people have them every single day. Turning them into a tangible reality is what's rare. And as our source material makes beautifully clear, the deciding factor isn't raw talent. It's not about being inherently smarter or born luckier or having better resources. The defining difference is strictly the ability to act even when your own mind is actively working against you. It's about marching forward through the psychological friction, embracing the brutal discomfort of reality, and being completely willing to risk a bruised ego to secure a victory. That brings our dreamer's journey to an end. But it is just the beginning for yours. Knowing all of the intense psychology we've uncovered today, knowing precisely how your brain will try to trick you with premature satisfaction, paralyze you with overthinking, and deceive you into waiting for a right moment that simply does not exist, I leave you with this challenge. What is the one imperfect, messy, terrifyingly uncomfortable step you can take today, right now, before your brain feels ready? The monsters in the maze only win if you stand still. Stop waiting for the illusion of readiness, step out of the comforting warmth of potential, and finally go face reality. Thanks so much for exploring this journey with me, and I dare you to take that first step today.